Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome back to the stage Senator Jeff Brandes.
All right, there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this morning's activities. I thoroughly enjoyed Brad's discussion, and we've had a great conference so far. And it's always difficult. Do I just kind of let this thing go, and let you enjoy lunch, or do I try to pack as much in as I possibly can, which is my nature? So this afternoon we have really 4 great speakers to come talk to you in 2 segments. I was honored this year to be able to go over to EcoMotion. I don't know if any of you have ever been over to EcoMotion, but it's probably the premier Israeli startup conference, really focusing on new startups that are emerging out of Tel Aviv. And through that experience, one of the kind of my takeaways was, how does Florida become the state where Israeli startups launch in the United States? We have fantastic expressway authorities. We have an incredible Department of Transportation. We're obviously much closer to Israel than we are as a flight time than to go to California. So how does Florida become the Israeli startup hub for the U.S.? And the interesting thing about Israeli startups, if you think about Israel, Tel Aviv is really the other Silicon Valley in the world. And so as we think about this problem and this opportunity, I thought it was important. So we have 3 startups from Israel here today to kind of talk a little bit about what their companies are doing, but then to kind of address that question of what else Florida can be doing to encourage startups in this state to grow here from Israel. The interesting thing about startups based in Israel is a country of like 8 million people. And so no startup actually builds just for the Israeli market. They need to build for the U.S. market. It's kind of build the concept out in Tel Aviv and then grow nationally or internationally as quickly as possible. So to me, that places Florida in an incredible position to be the launching point for all of these ideas. I don't think Florida will have, we're not going to have the Florida version of Silicon Valley. I don't think that's ever going to exist. But I do think we can borrow from both Silicon Valley and from Tel Aviv and launch and be the launch city for many of the great ideas that occur from around the world. So with that, I'm honored to introduce Pam Miniati to kind of host this session. And Pam, come on up, take it away.
Thank you, Senator. Well, I'm going to call to the stage the Israeli company that I'm going to be interviewing, so I don't have to sit up here all by myself. So Eran, Rozenfeld, please come on up. And before I get started, I want to thank the Senator and the organizers of this amazing summit for having me and for including a segment on Israeli startups and how we can continue to promote the growth of Israeli startups here in Florida. Just a little bit about me and where I work. I am with the Florida Israel Business Accelerator, which we call FIBA, F-I-B-A. And we have the amazing mission of trying to promote economic growth by connecting high-tech Israeli startups with companies and organizations, customers, strategic partners, investors here in Florida. We're generously funded from a grant from the state of Florida, as well as a grant from Hillsborough County. We have offices here in Tampa. We have some partnerships on the east coast of Florida. And our mission is really just to promote collaboration between Florida and Israeli high-tech companies. We are looking for organizations in Florida in multiple industries. Electric vehicles, we do a lot in healthcare. We've been working in hospitality. We've been working in urban technology. And we're looking for Florida-based organizations that have problems that you're willing to solve with technology. And we have a portfolio of companies that we work with in Israel who have these amazing technologies, and as the senator just talked about, their next step is to grow, and we want them to grow here in Florida. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about why Florida is a great place to grow. A few statistics about FIBA. We have worked with about 80 companies since our inception in 2017. Those companies, 24 of them now have a presence here in Florida and have created about 100 high-tech, high-wage jobs. A couple of the CEOs have relocated here with their families. They're in school, they've bought houses, a lot of sales offices have been open. So Florida is ripe right now for welcoming Israeli companies. Of these companies, 10 companies have had successful IPOs or exits, and together they have raised over $915 million in investment. So Israeli technology is amazing, as many of you know, and you're going to hear a little bit more about it now. So now I would like to introduce Eran Rozenfeld, who is the Vice President of North America for Driivz. And he is also a Florida resident, and we're going to hear about why he chose to come to Florida. So Eran, why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about Driivz?
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I hope that you can hear me. I prepared a quick presentation. So as soon as we'll see it, oh, here we go. All right. Eran Rozenfeld, Vice President for Driivz. I actually live here in Parkland, Florida, which is the East Coast. Right? I'm still getting used to it. Moved here about a year ago, so this is great. Great to be here. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about just a few minutes about who is Driivz, and then happy to chat with you a little bit about Israeli startups and everything around that. At Driivz, I think 10 years ago as a startup, we saw the two revolutions that are coming our way. One is the mobility one, and the other one is the energy one that we all see around us right now in the conversation, around the tables, and in the different sessions. We saw those, and we decided to be the glue between those two revolutions and to come with a software. We are a software company, a digital platform to connect those two revolutions. Our vision is recharge the planet for generation to come by driving the transformation of EVs into battery storage on wheels, because that's what we actually saw 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Essentially, we are an operating system for a global EV charging. So we have those networks like charge points and Blink actually in Florida, and Electrify America and EVgo and so on, and we have any other big companies that will manage tons of chargers. And we created, I think, the greatest operating system for them to make sure that things are running smoothly. We are modular end-to-end architecture. Some of the customers just using different modules, and today I'm just going to give you a brief about what we see in the market. But it's all about future-proof, scalability, stability that we hear a lot about reliability, reliable networks, and so on. And a lot of flexibility, of course. We are handling today hundreds of thousands of chargers. Just to give you an idea, in the Nordics, Norway and other states, countries around there, 8 out of 10 new vehicles bought are electric. Right? 80% of their public charging network is on top of Driivz platforms. We are behind the scenes with different customers. Like Circle K that you might know from here. They are operating in the Nordics as well, and Recharge and some others. We have over 1 million drivers already since we started very early. We are connected with the OCA. The bottom right is the Open Charge Alliance. That's the organization that actually create the protocols that are being used today in order to make sure that everyone is talking the same language. We actually help them and work with them together to create those protocols around the world. We support thousands of, over 1,000 charger types, so we are agnostic to charger and so on. You can see based on some of our customers, maybe some of them familiar, Shell, they have Shell Recharge in Europe as using Driivz. EVgo, it's the largest DC fast charging network in the US for public. They're using Driivz for many years. We actually did integration between them and ChargePoint, I think 5 years ago and so on. So that's a little bit about us. We obviously around us see the challenge, the drivers, people are buying the cars. It's not only Tesla, and I agree with the people that were here in the morning session. A lot of commitments from GM, from Ford. We see the need for a lot of chargers. Trust me, we're talking millions of chargers because it needs to be very, very easy. We need to support that, and we need to support different things in order to make it an easy transaction, this revolution. So we are looking, I think, from the driver perspective. We need to make sure that the driver will charge the same way that is, we're going today to a gas station, right? It should be easy, right? So we understand where the people will charge, at home, at work places, on the way, businesses and so on. And we need to build the different and the right features for them to support this smooth transition into electric. We need to make sure that those hundreds of thousands of chargers already are up and running. And if they are not up and running, to fix them automatically. You cannot send a technician to every charger that will not work. So we provide all of those tools to the customers, any customers, fleets, utilities, networks, and so on that will need to manage chargers. We're looking at a different experience, and we're also looking at the power needs. This is something I want to leave for 20 seconds. I mean, it's very complex, trust me. We are getting there, and I heard some of the questions about drivers and range anxiety and so on. I can tell you from where I'm standing, we are definitely getting there, but we are not even in the middle of the revolution, with the start of the revolution, so we need to give it a little bit more time. We need to look at the power. We need to look at where people will charge and make sure that we cope and we help with those challenges. We need to look at the driver, make sure that a driver doesn't need to download 6 different apps to charge. One is using a credit card, one using my iPhone, and 6 more apps, etc. We need to make sure that it's one and it is scalable, right? One solution scalable. I'll talk about some of those things, but I did want to share with you one little thing about the energy side of things, which is, I think it's fascinating, it's interesting, what we call the energy revolution. So we're working with the customers in the Netherlands from 2014, big customers around utilities that are actually looking at the grid and the power of the country over there. And they told us a couple of years ago, nah, we don't see any problem with the grid. We'll be fine, bring it on, bring the EV chargers, bring the cars and so on. This is recently where they already see congestion on high voltage. They already see how they're not able to distribute the renewable energy in the right way to support that. And on the right, you can see how the EV chargers, the green area, is actually going out from the threshold, meaning the grid cannot support it unless they'll do something and do it fast. So from a software perspective, of course, we look at that and we say, hey, we can help. We can actually understand. You want to put 50 chargers? Let's understand how many chargers. Let's understand how much power you got over there before you upgrade the grid. Let's help you to balance those chargers so you can connect many cars, but then let us help you control the charge so you can put more chargers and enable charging, because you cannot just decide to put 100 chargers outside right now. You need to prepare for that, etc. That's what we do. We will see how we're connecting to batteries and battery storage to support that. That's the part of the energy that is exciting, and to make those EVs, batteries on wheels, in order to support actually the grid and support what we need as a community as well. So I hope it was short, but this is what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Eran. So tell us, what motivated you to choose Florida as your home, as well as the U.S. base for Driivz North American operations?
Yeah, so this is the fun part of the story. So I'm an Israeli. I moved here with my wife and 2 boys about seven years ago. And, I worked for tech companies in the information system, in the medical devices, all tech companies, Israelis in the US. So they asked me, first to be in DC area and then to go to New York. And I remember, me, my wife, that used to the sun in Israel, it's warm, kind of like here. seeing the first snow, playing, the kids are playing, my wife is, thrilled, wow, this is so nice, snow. It didn't last. So it took us a year to understand that if you want to survive the cold weather at the north, you need to actually go to Florida once or twice during the winter. This is where we started to get to know Florida a little better. And then when I started 2 years ago to work with the Driivz, after COVID, traveling, working remote, I asked my wife, so do we want to stay in New York? Do we want to move? She didn't give me a chance even. She said, we're going to Florida. So here we are. So I based our activities, the Driivz activities here is based here. I'm growing the team here. And look at the support. I mean, this is a great support. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how's the state's ecosystem really supported the company's growth?
I think the FAV Summit, the FIBA, I mean, I see it I'm from Broward County. I see the innovation and tech and the thirst to bring tech into Florida, and you can definitely see it here today. And that comes with a lot of support, a lot of conferences, great relationship, networking, and so on, everything that you need.
Thank you. So there's a phrase, and it's almost a way of being in Israel. It's called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And it always surprises us. Almost every Israeli company that we work with has this notion of tikkun olam built into their company. So can you talk a little bit about Driivz's mission and how tikkun olam is a part of that?
It's great. I mean, it's been a while since I heard the phrase tikkun olam, but it's repairing the world. It could be also improving the world. And I think that when I joined the company and I saw how the founders looked at what is happening and what is coming in terms of the revolution, for them coming from the telecom revolution about 20, 30 years ago, if you remember, when we used to pay for a not very smartphone, $1,500 and so on, and it was hard. You pay for text, you pay for calls, and you cannot move from one city to other. They saw it, and they thought, hey, someone needs to start, or at least be of this part of this movement in order to take care of the drivers, make sure that it's seamless for them to charge, the chargers, the energy, and everything that comes with it. And I think that's what drove before being a business, with everything that goes with that.
So tell us a little bit about some of the unique challenges and opportunities you see in growing your business, both in Florida and globally as well.
So being a company that is working in a new industry, starting reminds you 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, we were far away from where we are right now. It is, of course, difficult because you need to convey the message of here is what's coming and here is how we need to prepare. I think that we took a good strategy to stick with the software side of things, innovative software, and to allow the other players in this market to grow networks. There are solutions for public charging, home charging, multi-dwelling unit charging outside of retails and so on. So I think that was a good strategy. And we see the fruits, coming right now, as we all see, right?
What advice would you give to Israeli startups and really to any startup for trying to grow their business in the U.S.?
I think that, one of the things to see, we need to make sure, and I think that FAV Summit is doing it, and you guys are doing that, and I see other around the Florida area doing it, get connected with the entrepreneurs in Israel, right? Like the EcoMotion that Senator Jeff just talked about and so on. Get connected with those startups. Show them the level of support that is available here. Some of the things I totally agree with you were talking about direct flight, that's important. I'm talking also about the time zone. We are in Eastern time zone. It's way easier to work here with Israel than is it to work in California. Bringing Israelis here, like my friends here from other startups, Tim and Tomer, show them the sunny Florida, the beaches, and the rest will come,
Looking ahead, What exciting developments and projects can we expect from Driivz, particularly here in Florida?
I think that we'll see soon more about energy and energy efficiency and how do we cope with the limitation of grids that we have right now in power, but still adding more and more chargers, making life of drivers way easier, right? Because it's a huge change for everyone. I think that we'll see what you saw in some of the presentations called V2G or V2X, that's vehicle to grid or vehicle to battery. So this is how the vehicles can support the grid or support the surrounding, etc. And over here, I heard that once in a while we have a hurricane. Listen, if you have school buses parking, right, at a huge parking lot in the nearest future, that's a huge amount of power in their batteries to support a town if needed in different cases. So we'll see more and more technology around that. And maybe one more thing that I'll mention, soon we will see this protocol it's called 15.11a, but basically it's plug and charge. It's coming, and this is the ability to plug your car, and all the authentication and the handshake between the car / driver / payment to the charger will happen automatically. So we are going there as well, and we will see it in the nearest future.
We are almost there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about Florida, about Driivz, about this summit?
So I'll start with the summit. I hope that there are some still desserts over there because I didn't have a chance. So bear with me, guys. The summit is great. I am very thankful for the FAV Summit to invite me here. I am truly surprised. I mean, to see the support, to see the stakeholder and the participants here and the conversation, it's amazing. I'm definitely here, at least planning to be here next year. So thanks a lot for that. And that's all.
Thank you, Eran.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now, I'm going to call the second presenter up to the stage. Where's Bruce? Oh, Bruce Edelstein, come on up.
Thank you. I know I'm sort of a surprise presenter. I got added to the agenda very late, and I thank Senator Brandes for letting me speak. I'm here representing the Alliance for Transportation Electrification in Drive Electric Florida, and I'll explain who they are in a moment. But I'm going to talk about taxes, which is a great way to end the conference, right? Is to talk about how your pockets are going to be lightened a little bit by the state government probably in this coming session. But highway funding and EVs and AVs is an important topic that the legislature is going to address. Drive Electric Florida sponsored a study by Cutter at the University of South Florida, which I want to present today. This is sort of the first public presentation of that study. But I want to talk about what we think the legislature ought to do in this coming session. First of all, Drive Electric Florida is a membership organization of charging companies, utilities, NGOs, and others in Florida. The mission is to accelerate adoption of EVs by engaging and educating the public. The Alliance for Transportation Electrification, or ATE, basically does the same thing as Drive Electric Florida, except at a national level. I'm a senior advisor to ATE. I chair the policy committee at Drive Electric Florida, and I'm here speaking on behalf of both organizations which support what I'm going to talk about. Florida has a highway funding problem. Estimates are that by 2030, there's going to be a loss in the highway fund for Florida of about $288 million. Those losses are being primarily driven by significant improvements in fuel economy, a 28% improvement expected between 2019 and 2030. There's also been a slower growth in vehicle miles traveled, and those two factors combined have left the highway fund wanting. But of those forecasted revenue losses, Only a small fraction of that is due to the fact that EVs don't currently pay taxes. Several bills have been introduced in the Florida legislature to impose varying fees on EVs. They've ranged in the amount to be charged. FDOT's electric vehicle master plan predicted that under a moderate growth scenario, potential losses would be 2% by 2030 and 11% by 2040, which still is not a big deal. But having said all that, we feel it's important that EVs do begin to contribute for their fair share of use of the roads in Florida. What we want to be sure of is that taxes aren't punitive on EVs and AVs, but rather should be developed in a way that does not exceed what a comparable gas or diesel powered vehicle would pay in state taxes. There's really three options that have been discussed for taxing EVs. One is an additional annual registration fee. A second is a tax on kilowatt-hour sales from EV charging stations. And third is a tax on vehicle miles traveled, which could be applied just to EVs or ultimately could be applied across the board so that all vehicles pay the same amount in taxes. What are other states doing? Well, unfortunately, a lot of states have been implementing EV taxes through annual registration fees or kilowatt-hour taxes that exceed what a comparable vehicle pays. Most states are adopting the option of additional registration charges, which is what Florida has been primarily looking at. A few states, including Georgia, have adopted a per kilowatt-hour tax. In Georgia, it actually has both an additional registration fee and a per kilowatt-hour tax. A few states have begun pilots on vehicle miles traveled to begin to test that concept. There's 31 states that have some type of EV fee. They range from the lowest of $50 in South Dakota to the highest in our neighbor here, Georgia, which is $211. What makes sense for Florida? As I mentioned, Drive Electric Florida commissioned a study by Cutter at the University of South Florida to develop this comparable estimate. That is, what EVs should pay given what gas-powered vehicles drivers pay. The study was completed this past March. Alexander Kolpakov was the author, in case you know him. I'll provide my contact information at the end, or if you want to give me your card, I'll be happy to provide anybody with a copy of the study. There were three tasks. First, a review of different state EV fees and approaches. Second, assessing the current impact on Florida's transportation revenue. And third, what their recommendations were for a Florida annual fee. The biggest question is what is comparable, of course. There's a simple formula to calculate what gas drivers pay, and that's their average annual vehicle miles traveled divided by a miles per gallon number, a comparable miles per gallon number, times the state gas tax rate. The real issue is what's the appropriate denominator. You could use the average vehicle on the road. That comes out to about 25 miles per gallon in that equation. You could use the average of new vehicles sold, the proxy for which is the national CAFE standard. That's about 41 miles per gallon. I think that's in 2024. Or you could use the average for EVs, which is about 117 miles per gallon equivalent. The Cutter folks who did the study decided that the most appropriate denominator to use would be the CAFE standards, justified by the fact that EVs are comparably newer models with much better than average fuel efficiency. So it probably wouldn't be fair to EV drivers to use the average of vehicles on the road. Using the EV miles per gallon equivalent of EVs would result in a very, very small tax on EVs. We think that's probably not realistic. So the middle option, the average CAFE standard, we think, and it's what Cutter recommended, is the best. The Cutter
study also recommended that the Florida legislature should only consider the state and local tax. There are federal taxes imposed, but if Florida were to impose the federal tax, there's really no one to send it to because there is no federal tax on EVs. So the state would keep that federal tax, and the state would be taxing twice. They'd be taxing first at the state level and second at the federal level. So we think the state should only tax the state portion of the total highway fund taxation. The end result of the Cutter study was $125 to $146 range for EV taxes for an additional registration fee, which was based on $89 lost in state taxes and local taxes, which ranged from $36 to $57. The per kilowatt hour tax, in the interest of time, I know everybody wants to get out of here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but we think there's a lot of problems with it. It's going to require a new bureaucracy at the State Department of Revenue. May eliminate any free charging that businesses offer. And if both the registration fee and a per kilowatt hour tax is imposed, that would again be double taxation. To conclude, roads have been underfunded for years due to inflation, stagnant gas tax rate, increasing fuel economy, and slow VMT growth. Electric vehicles are not the problem. Autonomous vehicles are not the problem. But they should pay their fair share for use of the roads. In the short term, we believe an additional registration fee in that range of $125 to $146 is fair and reasonable. But we ought to be also looking at longer term solutions where all vehicle drivers pay on the same basis and we don't have this bifurcated system between gasoline drivers and electric drivers. Vehicle miles traveled is one way to do that. There are other ways to do that. Everybody could also pay an annual additional registration fee, but we ought to be exploring options for ultimately getting those in sync. That's my contact information. I'll be around after lunch also. If you're interested in the study, give me your card and I'll be happy to send it to you. Thank you.
Here to close out this year's summit, please welcome back to the stage Greg Slater, Executive Director for the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, and Senator Jeff Brandes.
Well, thank you. This conference never disappoints. I learn something new every time and every session. So before we close out and before I turn it over to Senator Brandes to really close us out, let me first thank Senator Brandes continuously for his leadership in this space. We would not be where we are in Florida without him. And then adding to that, Representative McFarland, who is really kind of carrying that baton and really leading us in many areas. Then I want to thank our whole team, Keisha, Sue, the Playbook team, Dennis, Carrie, as well as everyone involved for this conference. It was amazing, and it always is. You know, I learned something new every time I come here. I saw two things new this year that I'd never seen before. One was a data session right after lunch that had a full house. You know, you're not used to seeing that. But second, I saw more notes being taken in a keynote last night than I have ever seen with Kathy Wood. It was amazing. So I hope you've all enjoyed this summit and our wonderful city while you're spending some time here. But we are really proud and honored to serve as a sponsor this year and next year. Same location, so we hope you enjoyed it. But over the last 2 days, we've all learned a lot, and we'll continue to do that. And finally, I will say that I will continue to stress what we need to do is collaborate and learn. And as we collaborate, it's the key to this continuous momentum. We continue to keep the conversations going in between sessions and after these types of events. That's how we make progress. I know I established a lot of conversations that we're going to keep going over the next few weeks and months, but a crowded table is always better than a lonely one. So bring everybody to the table and keep it all moving. So with that, I will just say thank you. We look forward to being the host next year, and I look forward to what progress we can make in between, and I'll turn it over to Senator Brandes.
I want to say thank you to Greg and the other Expressway authorities, CFX, MDX, Jacksonville, and THEA, as well as the Turnpike Authority and FDOT for your incredible support over the last many years, 11 years now, that they've stepped up to support this conference. I think it's interesting. You probably won't find another conference like this amongst the states. Something that annually sets the reset and brings everybody together, not just to kind of talk about big, bold ideas and see what's in the road ahead, but also to just really focus on good food and networking, which is something I really pride FAV in doing. So we're honored that you decided to join us for this series of FAV. We look forward to hosting you next year. God bless you. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.
Well, let's do some driving.
Thank you all for attending the 2023 FAV Summit. See you back here next year, same time, same hotel.